Yo, what's going on? This is Alex from Undeath, and you are watching John the Ninja.
Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's John the Ninja in the dojo, aka the dojo, aka the John the Ninja Studios, and you know this, man. Woo! Today I got a fun one because you guys know two things to be true. One, I love the Lord, and number two, I love my music. It doesn't matter if it's R&B, hip hop, but you guys know my bread and butter is heavy metal, hard rock. But there's a genre I never ever get to really dive into with you guys, and I love it too. That genre is death metal. Yes, I know my name, Ninja, should go along, but the singer I have here is making waves, and I mean waves that are unexpected with his band. This band is forging a new path and something that we could say is an onslaught and an obliteration of the ears, mainly because they are the new wave of death metal that is taken by storm. In a situation where death metal was calming down, they are part of the new wave of bands that are coming out and bringing life and sparking it back again. This band I speak of is Undeath, that was started in 2018 by their guitarist Cal Bean, their singer Alex Jones, and their drummer Matt Brown, who also does really, really great artwork for them. You need to check it out with the merch. But I digress. Dropping demos 19 and Sentient onto Elias. Well, nobody really can say that last one. I think it's on. Even the band's like, we don't know, but it sounds great. But again, within a short 2 years, they were signed to Prosthetic Records and already debuted their Lesions of a Different Kind, which was released in 2020. A blessing in disguise. Even though the pandemic dropped, they were able to bring music to the masses, new music, when it was much needed. And it gave a relief for tumultuous times. Once the pandemic settled down just a little bit, they were able to add their friends to bring in Tommy Wall to play bass and Jared Welch to do guitars to complete their sound of dominance. They began touring, most notably with Black Dahlia, not the murder case, we're talking about the band, and the sheer magnitude and strength of the music cannot be denied. They've been categorized among death metal's best bands: Cannibal Corpse, Autopsy, Death, Gatecreeper, and so many more. Their album, It's Time to Rise from the Grave, is dropping April 22nd, and they will be starting their tour in the same day. As I would say, Nathan Explosion would be proud of this album. And most importantly, they have been to Philadelphia. They've recorded in Philadelphia, and they're coming back to Philadelphia to the notorious TLA June 4th. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I give you one of the most brutal vocalists I've ever had the pleasure of speaking with, Alex Jones from Undeath. Good sir, how you doing?
Whoa, bro, that was like the greatest intro I've ever received. I have to applaud you for that. That was remarkable. I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Like I said, man, I'll complain later. It's been a crazy day. But no, man, like I said, I've been fortunate, but it is truly astonishing how fast and how great you guys are able to take this form of music that is not loved. I'm not gonna lie to you. People hear it, they judge us for it, they don't get it. Even you, when you first heard it, you too said, you know what, I heard the music and it wasn't for me, but later on you were able to understand what it was. So I want to dive into your upbringing, because we've heard about your mom, we heard about your dad, and it seems like a lot of really great death metal artists are the sweetest guys, had the greatest childhoods, and still fall into this form of music that can be really brutal and just a scary movie that is way beyond expectations. It's way gorier. So could you walk us through what it was like growing up in your household, what your parents were like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I did have like a pretty stable, pretty good childhood for sure. Which, like you said, is kind of ironic considering the kind of music that we play and the kind of subject matter that we sing about. But no, I mean, my parents were always very supportive and very encouraging with the stuff I was into, whether it was music or anything else, really. Like, I just kind of grew up in a household that was very encouraging of the arts, I guess, in general. So I had a really good and very supportive childhood for the most part. I mean, it was great. I really can't complain. And yeah, I mean, as far as metal goes, like, I didn't really get into metal until a little bit later. But I mean, I don't know, bro. Where do you want to start specifically?
I was thinking more so like, you know, when you're growing up, there's those formative years. Like for me, the top three will always be Bruce Lee, martial arts, because I've done Taekwondo, I've done karate, I've done Krav Maga. Basketball, Jason Kidd, the New Jersey Nets, the 76ers, Iverson, and music, AC/DC, Black Sabbath. Those were pretty much the core things that made up my childhood. Now I am excluding the video games in the back because that's a huge part, and I know you're a gamer too, but those were the things that captivated me. Those were the things that, mom and dad are looking at me like, we'll support, the martial arts and, the whatchamacallit, but the music, but like you said, my mom was really supportive. She thinks AC/DC was devil music, but she still bought me the guitar. She still allowed me to get the album. So I sympathize with, not sympathize, that's the wrong word. I understand from that, but I was thinking more so like how it was forming you. Like,
yeah, man. I mean, so since like honestly, as far back as I can remember, my primary interest has been music, and that's not to say that I haven't had other things that have captivated me growing up. I was really into video games from a very early age. I specifically remember, I was probably like 9 or 10, maybe a little bit younger than that, when the first Pokemon games came out. And it was Pokemon Red and Blue on the Game Boy. And I remember I wanted them so bad because at that point I was already watching like the Pokemon cartoon, and I didn't know that there was a video game. So I was like really, really, really pining to get these games. And then one year for Christmas, my parents surprised me and they got me and my brother Game Boys, and they got us each a copy of Pokemon. And that was like, this is unbelievable. I couldn't, that was like the greatest Christmas, the greatest gift I'd ever received, period. So, I mean, yeah, like I was super into games. I was super into like stuff like that, stuff like Pokemon. But I mean, music had its claws in me for forever, from an even earlier age. As far back as I can remember, I would go through my dad's record collection and I would see what he had. I would really kind of flip through like his CDs and his LPs just to familiarize myself with just like as many different kinds of music as I could, because something about it just kept drawing me in. And honestly, when I was like maybe 11, 12 years old, I heard Green Day for the first time, and that band just like kind of changed my whole life. Like, because up until that point, like I loved music and I loved like my dad's bands or my mom's bands, like I loved like the Clash, I loved the B-52s, I loved stuff like that, just stuff that my parents listened to. I didn't really have any bands that were mine. And then I heard Green Day for the first time, and I was obsessed with it. I loved it, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So that was kind of like my first real personal foray into music, and like what became kind of a lifelong journey for me.
And again, you already mentioned some of the bands like the Clash and the B-52s. Your dad was into classic rock, a little punk. I believe your mother was into more show tunes, more theatrical theater. You know what I mean? Like Hamilton. And the thing that I love is your encyclopedia knowledge. Even when you're just talking about your type of music, everybody else's genre, you have such a wide range. You can just, oh no, it was off this album. Oh, it was that album. And it doesn't matter what genre. You have this encyclopedic mind of music, which really pushes home the love. When did you get into singing? Because you've had other bands before Undeath, and singing is a totally different ballpark because you're the instrument. So you have to take care of yourself. So what really made you take the step and say, you know what, I think I should be at the front of the stage. You need to move over, Mr. Guitars.
I wanted to play guitar first. Like that was kind of my first ambition. Like I think it is with so many kids that are getting into music. But I didn't really have like guitar heroes the way that a lot of people do. I didn't really have like an Eddie Van Halen or anything like that. Just somebody who was amazing at guitar that blew my mind and made me want to try it for myself. It was just like, I liked music so much and I liked bands so much and I liked the idea of being in a band so much that I was just kind of like, well, what do people in bands do? They play instruments, where it seems obvious, but like, in my 12, 11-year-old perspective, that was like a very revolutionary thought. And I was like, okay, well, there's no way my parents are going to let me have drums in the house because it's going to be way too loud. Bass, you know, I could attempt to pick that up, but at that point, I was thinking bass is very cool, and I have a lot of respect for people who are very good at it. But you know, in my childhood perspective, I was just thinking like, if I'm going to try to play bass, I might as well try to play guitar. You know, so I begged and begged and begged my parents to let me get a guitar. Eventually, they caved, and they got me this. It was like one of those guitar combo things you could order through like the Walmart catalog. It was like a battery powered combo amp, and like I think the brand was Ion. I don't know if it still exists, but it was your bog standard like starter Stratocaster or Strat ripoff. And I had it, but and I was ecstatic to get it, but I didn't have like the discipline to sit down and learn music theory or take lessons or actually like go through the rudiments to help me get better at the instrument. You know, that honestly didn't come until like last year that I actually started like really trying to learn guitar seriously. So I just kind of got frustrated with it really fast because I was slamming on power chords. I was like just playing really sloppily, and I wasn't actively doing anything to improve my ability at this instrument. And as a result, I was like, well, why am I not instantly getting better at this? You know, why am I not instantly the greatest guitar player? So I just put it down for a while. And I kind of had this very naive, selfish reaction to the instrument and the process of learning an instrument. So in the first band I was ever in, I sort of like conned my way into it because they needed a guitar player and I had a guitar. So I was like, yeah, I can play guitar. And it became pretty evident to them immediately that I couldn't actually play guitar. But I think I was like so young and so excited about being in a band that they just like didn't have the heart to kick me out. Because I was like, I don't know, at that point I was probably like 15. But even, like we started playing shows with that band and I was just like playing these really sloppy power chords and I just wasn't really feeling it. I didn't really have any like real attachment to guitar. And I vividly remember being on stage and looking out like at our singer and thinking to myself, like, damn, I want to be doing what he's doing. I want to be the front man. I want to be the guy out there. I don't want to be like hiding behind this instrument. I want to be like interacting with the people. And that was kind of like the big wake up call moment for me were those earliest shows. And, just to put a pin in this too, like when I realized that, I kind of had a lot of soul searching, whether I realized it or not. And I looked back at all the musicians that I admired. And like I said, I didn't have guitar heroes. I had like vocalist heroes. Like all the band members that I looked up to the most were always the front people. It was people like Cedric from At the Drive-In and the Mars Volta. It was people like Mark Paffey from Bear vs. Shark. It was people like Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden. Like it was always like it was the singers. It was the front people, and that's when it kind of clicked for me, where I was like, oh, that's kind of what I want to do in a band. I want to be like those people. I don't want to be the guitar player. So that's really when that journey started for me.
So walk me through your teaching yourself to sing. I was just talking to Visions of Atlantis, the singer Clementine, and we had a beautiful conversation about learning to sing properly. I have had some musically trained lessons with my teacher. She's a musically trained, you got to know the octaves, you got to know the actual theory, do, re, mi, and you have to sing that way. But she was saying how rewarding it was to be able to master that craft. Your style can be so unforgiving on the vocal cords. There's stories of guys that have gone, did one growl wrong. It wasn't even full force. They just went to go it, and then that's it. Their vocal cords are done. They're not going to be able to sing that way anymore. So for a style such as yours, when you first started singing, was it more so normal and then learning, or where you said, you know what, I'm just going to sing it, learn it the hard way? And then how did you adapt to keep your vocal cords safe with the style of death metal?
That's a great question. It was like a trial by fire. It was a learning process, and I learned how to kind of do things right by just doing them wrong forever, for better or for worse. You know, when I started doing vocals in bands, like I was so into hardcore and so into punk and the kind of like DIY culture that comes with that, that I just couldn't be bothered actually sitting down and like learning how to use my voice and learning how to like take care of it like an instrument. I just wanted to get up on stage and do it as fast as possible. I wanted to just be in a band. That's all that mattered to me. And I didn't really care if I hurted myself in the process. Um, so that's really how it started. You know, the first couple bands I was in, like uh I was just fucking screaming at the top of my lungs. I was just screeching. There was no rhyme or reason or technique to it. I was just I wanted to scream in a band and I had things to say, and I just needed to get up on stage and do it. Um and that was tough. It was tough for a long time. And I think specifically about a band I was in for a long time called Druce. We were kind of you could like best describe it as screamo, you know, like not in like a bullet for my Valentine way, but screamo all the great like 90s bands like Orchid and Jerome's Dream and Funeral Diner, kind of like the world of like more emotive hardcore bands. That was what we were going for. And you know, I don't know how familiar your listeners are with that style of music, but because it's very strange and niche. But uh, those vocals are notably like harsh and screeched, and there is like literally no technique. So, and that's what I was doing. I wanted to approximate those people, and I was in that band for 5 years, and you know, it was the band that I was in right up until I started doing Undeath. So that's 5 years of me just shredding my vocal cords. And we would go on tour, we would play, you know, weeks of shows in a row, and my voice would be completely gone by like the third or fourth show because there was no technique at all. I was just screeching. And I just kind of thought that's how you did it. I thought that's just a thing that anybody who screamed in a band went through. You know, I thought it was normal to get off stage after a show and just have like a throbbing migraine because you had been screaming at the top of your lungs for 30 minutes. You know, I thought it was normal to be tracking vocals in the studio and get a nosebleed because you've been screaming so hard for hours and hours on end. But it kind of dawned on me, you know, a little too late, but it dawned on me like toward the end of that band that was not normal, that you could scream in a band and have some longevity to it and take care of yourself. And I remember the last couple of shows that Druce played, I would get off stage and I would think to myself, like, I don't know how much longer I can do this. You know, I can feel my vocal cords just like receding with time. And, you know, like to this day, talking to you right now, my falsetto voice is basically gone. Like there's a whole octave, I guess, of my voice that I just can't access anymore because I was just screeching for so many years. And, you know, I don't feel any regret towards that. It's just, it is what it is. But I remember those last couple of shows, I was like, I want to keep screaming in a band. I want to keep doing this for a long time, but I can't keep doing it like this. Like this is just not sustainable. And that was right around the time that Kyle asked me if I wanted to try out for what would become Undeath. And that kind of presented an exciting new opportunity for me in a lot of different ways, of course. But speaking specifically to the vocal aspect of it, it was exciting because the register of vocals was on the complete opposite end of the spectrum of Druce. You know, with Druce, I'm screeching like a pterodactyl. And then with Undeath, it's like gurgling like at the bottom of my register. So it was a fun new kind of chamber to access. And B, it kind of presented me with this clean slate where I was like, okay, you know, you're getting a fresh start here. You're starting a new band. You're doing stuff vocally that you're not entirely familiar with, like from a technique standpoint. Why don't we use this as an opportunity to actually like learn how to do the thing that you've been attempting to do for the past 10 years? So that was exciting. And I know I've been talking for a long time, but it's a very good question, and you've got me thinking. But just to kind of put a bow on it, I guess, like with Undeath, it was exciting because I feel like through the first couple demos and pretty much up until we recorded Lesions, our first album, I was kind of learning how to do it as we went. And I feel like every year in this band, I've just kind of gotten more and more comfortable doing the style of vocals. And I feel like I've gotten more confident with it. And I remember, when we were tracking the first demos and when we were tracking Lesions, like I had no idea what I was doing really, but I knew that it didn't hurt. And I knew that while I was doing it, I wasn't getting nosebleeds and I wasn't like feeling like I was going to pass out from doing it. So I was like, okay, well, I might be doing something right. And then I think the big test for me personally was when we went out on that Black Dahlia Murder tour. And that was like 35, 33 shows in a row or something like that. And I remember thinking to myself before we went out, like, okay, you want to be a vocalist in a band, this is the longest stretch of shows that you've ever done in your life. Like I had done 2 weeks of shows before. I had done like a week and a half of shows before, but never anything close to 6 weeks continuous screaming. And I remember being so just petrified before we went out because I thought the same thing was going to happen. History was going to repeat. I was going to blow out my voice in the first 3 shows, but I didn't. I lasted the entire time. And it was the strangest experiences. I feel like as the shows went on and my voice got more worn in and like road tested, like I got better somehow and I got more confident. And that was the complete opposite thing to what I experienced before. So yeah, to make a very long answer short, I mean, it was just, I kind of had to do it wrong for long enough that eventually I had to put myself in a position where I was forced to learn how to do it right.
And I really want to drive home to the fans watching, not just the fans, but just everyone that is musically inclined. I'm pretty sure it was with that band prior to Undeath. You said you had one of the worst shows of your career. You guys were in a basement. It was like 2 people there watching you. But I really want to drive home this idea of what you just explained. You're literally physically causing your body to go through this intense situation that has actually cost you to some extent. And it was literally for almost nobody. It was basically a glorified band practice if people would look at it that way. So that I really want to drive home the commitment and the love for the craft. Sometimes people are like, if you love it, it shouldn't hurt. Well, sometimes that's debatable. So I really want to commend you for that style of singing. And especially now, let's hop back. Let's go to Undeath. You and Kyle have been friends for a while. There's stories of you guys just like, hey man, you want to go hang out? Yeah, go to the bar. And I don't know why this bar had this. First off, they had a jukebox. So that's way back in the day. And then number 2, it had death metal in it. So you guys would just load up the machine just to play death metal the whole time, which if you come back to the Philly area before the show, man, I got a place for you. You're going to love them. You're going to love moms. But listening to Kyle in his interviews and then listening to you guys talk about him, he is the Steve Harris of this band. He directs, he has a vision, and you guys aren't like, oh, we don't have any say, but you hang on what he says. You put your 2 cents in, and it's a democracy, but at the end of the day, everybody agrees, this is his vision, and we like it. So totally. Walk me through how that friendship became even more now that you guys are in the band, how he mentored you as a singer, because the man literally just listening to his playing and the stuff he makes up, he gets a song structure. He gets it. He has a little theory, but you can tell, okay, here's somebody, he might not know the theory, but he knows what he's doing. So going from, hey man, you want to grab a drink? Oh, that was stupid. Going to, hey, listen, Alex, when you do this scream, I want you to try and match this chord or this or that. What was that transition like? Did it strengthen the bond? And do you feel more in awe of him now for it?
Yeah, it definitely strengthened it. I mean, the thing with Kyle is like, I was like vaguely aware of him before the band started. Like we were kind of like acquaintances, I guess is the best way to put it. Like our old bands, like Drews and his old bands had like played shows together before in Rochester and Syracuse. So like I knew who he was, but I didn't really like have a close friendship with him or anything like that yet. And honestly, like my personal experience with Kyle is like inextricably linked to Undeath. You know, like I feel like every year that the band goes on, like my friendship and my kind of like camaraderie with him just like grows even more. And it's a very kind of like interesting thing to me, just in terms of how that like feels in my life. But with Kyle, it's easy because I think he's a man with a vision, and he has like a very when he sets out to write a song or write lyrics for a song or just do really anything that has to do with this band, he does it with like I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. Like he does it with a goal in mind. He never just kind of like meanders. He never just like half-assedly presents something to me and he's like, I don't know, like this is something I'm not really proud of. You know, when Kyle shows me a riff, there's like a determination behind it. Like I know that he's serious about it. And for me, that was a huge relief. And it was something that I noticed very early on because in all the previous bands I've been into, there really wasn't that, and this isn't like a diss on any of my previous bands, but I never saw like the degree of just like sheer craftsmanship that Kyle puts into putting these songs together. You know, I've played in bands with great players before, great people before, but nobody has ever really had that kind of like animal instinct that Kyle has just for like making music. So I mean, I gotta like give him infinite kudos for that because it inspires me on a daily basis just to like continue to get better at what I do personally. But as far as our relationship has grown, it's grown tremendously over the years. And, you know, I remember when I first joined the band, I was used to the experience of, you know, the guitar player writes the guitar parts and then the drummer writes the drums. And then the singer, like you just kind of show up with whatever lyrics that you have and everybody just kind of shrugs their shoulders and you slap them on top of the song and, you know, bada bing, bada boom, it's over. But with Kyle, you know, I showed up to the very first Undeath practice and he had like lyrics for me. And I remember it was kind of like a culture shock because in my mind, I was like, oh, well, like the singer writes the lyrics, right? Like I'm so not used to this phenomenon of the guitar player presenting the front man with lyrics. But it wasn't like an ego trip. I wasn't like balking at this idea of him presenting me with a finished song. I was just like, oh, this is weird, but it's like good weird. I think I'm into this weird. And it became very evident very fast that the man knew what he was doing. And, you know, from the very first couple of songs that we wrote, it became obvious to me that like, yo, this guy writes the songs. He's so familiar with like the ins and outs of these riffs. Of course, it makes sense that he would also be the best person to layer vocal patterns on top of them because it's his music. He gets it. And for somebody like me, I also don't have the compositional or like the music theory background that he has, in addition to just the familiarity with the songs that he's writing. So if I were to present lyrics to it, it would be a situation where I was just writing something and then slapping it on top of the song with no real thought for like hooks or melodies or snappy vocal patterns or anything like that. I would just be kind of like writing my little poetry and then layering it, and then that's it. So that was cool, and it was something that I was really stoked on from the very beginning of the band, and I continue to be stoked on. And it's been fun, man. I mean, like, I feel like every year that the band has gone on and like the more opportunities that we get and the more traveling that we get to do together, like, I think it's just gotten to the point where Kyle and I just kind of have this rapport where we know each other's likes and dislikes. Like, we know the shit that's going to like make each other laugh, but we also know the kind of stuff that's going to get underneath each other's skin. Like, so there is that relationship now at this point that it's like it's very comfortable, and it's very it creates a very good environment for creative expression because we just kind of know each other's ins and outs in a way that I've never really experienced in the band before. So I've been very excited about that.
Walk me through your thoughts the first time you heard Undeath. For me, the hardest thing to hear as a musician and try and play was Slayer for the drums at the time. When I really first dived into heavier, harder metal. And considering the music we listen to, that is nothing. Oh my gosh, that is like, that's just like, hey, we're having a good day. It's sunny outside. But when I first heard Rain in Blood, Angel of Death, and I'm hearing Dave Lombardo playing these songs on the drums, my little band mind from like doing bass drum and snare was blown. I'm like, where the fuck is the beat? Where's the beat? Like, what is he? The guitar, it seemed like they were on a totally different planet than what the drums were doing. And then as time grew on, I learned, let's dive way into really harsh death metal where if to the untrained ear, it just sounds like a conglomerate of noise. And you're like, what the hell is going on? I think the best example for people, and it's always going to be the best example, is Corpse Grinder. He comes out with Cannibal Corpse, and they're like, and people are like, we don't get it. The thing I like about Undeath is I can hear what is happening, and it's still harsh, it's still brutal, but you can hear what Kyle's doing, you can hear what Matt's doing. So when you initially got into this, having the background of death metal and hardcore and being musically sound, you know what I mean by that. It's what were your thoughts when you first heard the music, and did you get like, hey, this is different? Or was it like, hey man, this is great, and then as you progressed to make the music and it caught on like wildfire, and you're like, oh shit, we got something here, man. This is more than just fun.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever heard any of Kyle's riffs. Like I remember like very specifically, like it was yesterday. I remember I had been trying to start a metal band for a long time. I didn't know like what kind. It didn't matter to me what kind of metal band, whether it was like death metal, black metal, doom metal. Like I didn't care. I just wanted to be in a metal band. And I was putting out feelers. I was trying to see if anybody wanted to do that, but I was just coming up short left and right. Nothing was really happening. And I remember one day I was just doing my laundry, and Kyle just shot me a DM on Facebook, and he was like, hey, like, do you have any interest in singing for a metal band or a death metal band? And it just came out of nowhere. And I was like, yeah, bro, 100%, like, absolutely, like, let's do it. And he was like, great, cool, here's the 3 songs that we have written so far. And he just sent me these like practice space recordings that him and Matt did, and it was like Unadorned Coffin from the first. It was just 3 songs on the first demo. It was like Unadorned Coffin, Perverted Self Reflections, and I think like Archfiend. And it was like these really raw like iPhone recordings in the practice space of just like guitar and drums. And I remember standing there with my phone on like my dryer, listening to these recordings, and I was like, what is going on in these songs? Like, this is insane. But not insane in like an incomprehensible way, insane like I'd never heard like death metal like that before, which is funny because I feel like by and large the style of death metal that Undeath plays is very meat and potatoes. It's very straightforward, but I had never really heard riffs with the kind of like swag that Kyle's riffs have. So that was very mind-blowing to me. That was like a very exciting experience hearing those guys play together for the very first time. And I remember I like brought the phone upstairs and I showed it to my girlfriend. I was like, oh, these kids want me to like join their band, like, and she was like, oh, like what kind of band is it? I was like, it's like death metal. I was like, listen to these riffs. And I like played her the songs, and she was like just laughing. She was like, what is happening in this music? Like, this is insane. Yeah. And that's kind of when I knew. I was like, I gotta meet these people. Like, even if this band doesn't go anywhere, like even if it's just I show up to practice and I suck, or like I show up to practice and they turn out to be like assholes or something, like I gotta at least like meet the man who wrote these riffs face to face. I gotta look him in the eyes. And it was like, I remember I showed up to practice a couple days later, and from then on we were just like inseparable. Like we practiced like I think they never like officially asked me to join the band or anything. It was just, I don't think, at least I think I just kind of showed up. I did my best like John Gallagher Dying Fetus impression over the riffs that they had, and then from then on it was just kind of like understood that I was in the band, I guess. So that was my formative Undeath experience.
And that's so beautiful. Yeah, the wrong word to use for the genre we're talking about. I hate that cliche. It's always got to be brutal, it's got to be death, but
it is beautiful.
You know what I mean? When you guys
yes.
come together of just the common love of music, and then all of a sudden, it's something about music makes it a deeper bond.
Absolutely. And you know, like, I appreciate you saying that, because like it is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's when people from different walks of life can get together and, you know, get in one room and make music that everybody's excited about. Like, that's just a beautiful thing. And just because it's death metal, it doesn't have to be like putrid, gross, macabre, etc., etc. Like, that's such a boring crutch that people lean on with the genre. Like, yeah, obviously death metal is a genre that's obsessed with all things gore and violence and torture, etc., etc. But like, I'm so sick of reading reviews and interviews with death metal bands, and the writer is just trying to fit as many like scary adjectives as possible into it. It's like, we can just talk about this the way that it is. It's just fun. It's cool. Like, it doesn't have to be oh, these putrid, festering, blah 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 blah. It's like, let's just talk to each other like adults here, you know?
It is funny, but I will say this, because I was reading the PR you guys had, and whoever wrote for you guys, they did a wonderful job. Yes, it had like the blistering and death, but they were such a craftsman with that writing. I was like, damn, this should be politician work right here. So you guys have such a good following, and that really stems from the live performance. I had no idea how difficult or how much pressure there really could be on a front man. I'm very charismatic when it's in the moment. Now I understand that, you know, the anticipation, the adrenaline before the show goes on, you have that feeling of it's fear, but it's really adrenaline. But I didn't know singers really were so pressured to, like, hey, once the song's over, I have to say something clever. Hey, you know, no dead silence. I gotta, you know, when I'm doing my vocals, I have to have my own gimmick. You know, Bruce Dickens does the waving. It looks stupid now, but back in the day, it's like, damn, this man's cool as hell.
Oh, in 1984, that was the coolest thing anyone had ever seen.
So when you first, I want to see what your thoughts are from the first performance you had with Undeath, considering that you had already a decade of performing, versus the last time you guys, which wasn't too long ago, the last time you guys toured. What's changed, and what things made you a little bit more confident as a singer now? Because when we see you on stage, it's like, this literally the guy in high school that's going to kick my ass. I don't know what I did, but it's coming. But then again, we're talking now, and you're like, bro, it's been like we've been bros for forever. So walk me through the transition of you becoming the singer of Undeath and dealing with pressure.
It's funny you say that, because I in high school, I was not the guy that was even getting close to kicking anyone's ass. I was a dork through and through. But yeah, in the early days of Undeath, I think, like, in our first couple live shows, I was just trying to be what I thought like a death metal frontman should be. I was just trying to like approximate this ideal of like the perfect death metal frontman, you know. So I like it was weird. Like, I think I was just like kind of figuring myself and my stage persona, so to speak, out in a way. You know, I played a couple shows where I was wearing like sunglasses on stage. Like, I played a couple shows where I was like, oh, I played shows with bullet belts. Like, I was wearing like a bullet belt and like a cut off t-shirt. Like, I was really just trying to fit into this mold that I had in my mind of like, okay, this is what a death metal singer looks like. This is what a death metal singer moves like. So I'm just going to do that. And I'm just going to like pay service to this like fantasy that I have in my mind. But the more shows we played, those constructs just like appealed to me less and less. You know, I was like, I don't want to have to, like, when I put on this bullet belt before we go on stage, I just feel like a moron. I would never walk around and go to the grocery store and like go to the bank with like a rack of bullets around my waist. Like, why do I feel compelled to wear them on stage? You know, and I get it. Like, I get the fantasy aspect, I get the performance aspect of it. Obviously, you know, with all performance art and live music, there's that element of theater. There's that kind of like wish fulfillment. But for me, and just like my personality and like the culture that I come from and the things that I was interested in growing up that shaped me as a person, I've just always placed a lot of stock and a lot of value in just sincerity, I guess, and just being honest and being real. And when I went on stage wearing like camo pants and bullet belt, I was like, I'm not being real. Like, I'm not being real with myself. I'm not being real with the people that like my band. So, I kind of dropped that pretty fast. And then from then on, I was just like, I'm just going to be comfortable. I'm just going to be myself. And like, who am I? I'm a guy that I like to crack jokes. I like to make people feel comfortable. I like to just kind of like diffuse the situation and just not take things too seriously. And that was the persona that I brought on stage with Undeath. And it's funny to call it a persona because it's really not. It's just kind of like how I operate on a day-to-day basis. Like the way that you see me right now is by and large like the way that I act on stage as well. It's just louder on stage. So yeah, I mean, I kind of reached that point by just getting more comfortable and getting more confident as well. The more shows that Undeath had under our belt, the less that I felt like I needed to be something that I wasn't. And like when I started to realize like, oh, people like Undeath not because of some like protracted thing that I'm doing on stage. People don't like Undeath because the singer is wearing camo pants. People like Undeath because they like the music. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, so I can just kind of do whatever I want. And as long as we're still playing these songs, people won't really care. So yeah, that was kind of how I arrived there. And now I feel more comfortable than ever just kind of being myself.
Before we get to the new album, I want to reach back to this concept of death metal or these music genres and the people behind it. Alice Cooper said it best. You'll look at these guys on stage, they're sacrificing pigs, they're covered in blood, and then you see them, they've got glasses and are like the meekest guys you'll ever see. And you're like, well, do you really believe in this stuff? It's like, oh yeah, but man, you're great. Can I get your autograph? And watching the history of metal on VH1, there was a guy one time, he said, when you're in adolescence, listening or drawing upon evil feels good for some reason. And it may not be that you're evil, but maybe it's the fear that draws you in and you want to listen more and see what's happening. Like when I heard Disciple by Slayer, God hates us. Oh, well, I'm Christian. God loves us. So, it was confusing, but you can't walk away. So why is it's always the meek guys, the quiet guys, the guys that have always been the diffusers and not necessarily, think Steve Rogers before he became Captain America. It's always that guy that can't fight back. Why are we always the ones that tend to be the ones that are the heavy metal greats or the death metal greats that come in and we're kicking so much ass? Is it because that's a part of us that we can't express in everyday life, or is it because it is something in us? It's just the only avenue we can really release it and let people see it.
That's a great question. I think it's kind of like a two-pronged thing because at least in my experience, like I can only speak from my personal experience here, but like when I first started getting into metal specifically, there was that element of like escapism to it. I think a lot of people can speak to that as kind of like an early appeal of why they got into metal. It offered something different than what I was experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And by the time I discovered metal, or like not even discovered, but like really got interested in metal, I was already pretty well versed in like punk and hardcore and things like that. And when you're coming from that world, all of the tenets of hardcore are like realness and toughness and just being like I don't know, just kind of acting with this kind of like tough guy swagger and bravado and like not giving a shit. And that was cool and I enjoyed it, but I knew that wasn't me. I knew that I wasn't a guy like the people in Madball or Agnostic Front or something like that. I wasn't like this tough weathered veteran who grew up in the Lower East Side in the 80s and I'm like hanging out with drug dealers and like going to Rikers Island and stuff. Like that just wasn't me. I was a nerdy little white kid from the suburbs. I didn't have anything in common with these people. So I guess like and I still love those bands. I still love bands like, you know, like the tough hardcore bands like Madball and Biohazard and stuff like that. That's still some of my favorite music. But I guess the entire time that I was listening to them growing up, I kind of felt like this imposter syndrome in a way, where I was like, if these dudes saw me like singing along to these very tough lyrics at their shows, they would laugh at me because they knew that I like wasn't about it. But with metal, it kind of offered the fantasy, I guess, that hardcore really doesn't. There wasn't that expectation that you also had to like live this life. Like you could, like, you know, Bruce Dickinson isn't slaying dragons. Like, you know, that guy isn't actually, I mean, well, he is a pilot, but like, you know, he wasn't like flying fighter jets in World War II. Like the things that he's singing about, I'm just talking about Iron Maiden specifically here, obviously, but like the things that a guy like that is singing about is pure fantasy. It's pure role playing. It's to draw you into something greater than yourself and to make you feel like you're part of something, and to have that kind of like escapism from your day-to-day life, whereas something like hardcore is like making you confront your day-to-day life. And I guess at the time that I really started getting into metal, I was about that escapism. I wanted to just kind of like get away from things for a while. So I think that's like the initial approach, the initial appeal, I guess, for people like me, is it just offers like a way out. It offers something else to focus on. But then when you really kind of expand on that idea, I think if you go about metal the right way, and you go about like metal fandom the right way, it does offer a lot of potential for self-improvement. Because for me, a lot of the confidence that I have gotten and kind of like received growing up has been because of my experiences through metal. It's been because of going to shows and like learning how to be like a self-sufficient individual because of my experiences like listening to metal and playing in bands and going on tour and stuff like that. And those were all things that metal gave me. And through that, it became less about fantasy and more just like an opportunity for self-improvement. It sounds very cliche, or not cliche, it sounds very ridiculous to say, but it is true. Like when I was growing up and really getting into metal and going to metal shows, a lot of the metal frontmen that I liked were like jacked, and they just had like great physiques, because to be a metal frontman, you kind of have to have like a commanding stage presence. You have to be able to draw people in and play this like ridiculous music with some degree of sincerity. And a good way to do that, a good way to like command a crowd, is just to be like physically impressive. So that was like a big influential thing for me, which just was going to shows and seeing these like very physically fit people in bands. And I was like, well, there's no reason that I can't do that too. So that, in that way, metal provided a lot of physical self-improvement for me in a way that nothing else ever really has. So it's a very strange and complex thing, but I do think that metal can absolutely provide people with a lot of very positive outlets.
Agreed. And I think it's a little different for us because music is so important to us. Because it does blow my mind. I'll meet somebody who's like, I listen to music or this, that. They're not as into it. But I think for people like us, like I can name off the top of my hands and then some moments at concerts that meant the world to me. Best concert of my life. Miracles happen. It's really fascinating. And I love the fact that you point up how it influences you. Like you saying, I can look physically fit on stage. That just reminds me of Peter Steele, may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Like when I'm on stage, I want to look a little, menacing. That's what the music is presenting. So it's influence upon influence. Let's hop into it. It's time to rise from the grave. I don't remember passing away, but it is time to rise from the grave. The new album. I'm going to run through the set real quick for the fans. Fiend for Corpses. That's actually a really great name. We're just going to stop there on that. Defiled Again, Rise from the Grave, Necrobionics, that one we're going to get to. Enhancing the Dead, The Funeral Within, Head Splattered in Seven Ways, Human Chandelier, I'm not a good reader, Bone Rot, and Trampled by Headstones. Actually, I really do like that. That last one's pretty great too. But there's so many things I loved about researching the work you guys did on this album, from Scoops to coming back to Philly and etc. But before we hop into all my other questions that I really want to hop, one connection I made, and I don't know if I should have or not, but you had appendicitis when you were in 4th grade, and the thing actually burst in you, and you should have gone. And the only person I could remember even having close to a story like that is Brian Johnson, AC/DC. It's my favorite band. So now that, again, all the time you put into learning to sing, all the experience you have, your sophomore effort, there's certain ways vocalists like to do takes. You said you like to do it line by line. Could you elaborate what you mean by that? Because when I thought, like Brian Johnson, they call him One Take Johnson. He likes to go in, do it one time, and that's it. And if he has to do it again, the live performance is gone. So when you said you do one takes, are you doing it more so like, let me get the line in, move on to the next one? Or are you doing it like Eazy-E? You have to punch it in take by take. That doesn't sound right. Do it again over and over. Are you doing it line by line? Are you doing it phrase? Could you walk us through your preferred style of recording your vocals?
Yeah, sure. It's crazy that you brought up the appendicitis thing. Like that's wild. I forgot that I even talked about that. So damn, that's crazy. Kudos to you for remembering that. But yeah, with the vocals, let's see. I mean, my process has kind of like got way more relaxed over the years. I mean, when the band started, I was doing that like easy phrase by phrase thing. Like I was so meticulous with the way that I wanted to track vocals, like to the point where, you know, I was doing like chunks of 3 words at a time. And then if like one word didn't sound perfect to me, I was like, oh, well, I got to do that and again. I got to do that like become again, you know, like, because it wasn't perfect. And I think that's a totally valid way to track vocals. I know a lot of people that still do that, and I did that pretty much up until this album, up until its time. And for that one, I just wanted to feel a little bit more relaxed in the studio. I didn't want to, because it is a stressful process, like just, you know, spending 6-7 hours on one song that you could be spending an hour or 2 on if you just like go line by line, you know? So going into this album, I definitely wanted to be a little bit more relaxed. So instead of doing word by word, I wanted to go like line by line, or every other line by every other line. So what I would do is I would get in the booth, play the track, and have the lyrics in front of me, and I would just try to like get through like 3 lines at a time, like just straightforward. Just try to do like a verse at a time, or like half a verse, depending on the song, or in like how like dense the verses are. And then once I'm like 3 or 4 lines deep, Scoops would stop it. We would go through and listen to it, and I would say, okay, like I feel good about that whole take. Let's do one more take where I just do the last part of the verse one more time. And then we would punch that in, and then boom, the verse is done. So it was a way less meticulous process this time around in terms of tracking the vocals. It was way more natural. You know, there were songs like Head Splattered in 7 Ways or Necrobionics that are like very lyrically dense, and the verses are very like complex and have a lot of like very tricky phrasing that I did have to really go over meticulously and make sure that everything was exactly where it needed to be, just so it wasn't off time. So that in that sense, those songs were like the earlier days of Undeath recording, but by and large, this album was way more relaxed and way more easygoing in terms of tracking the vocals. And honestly, moving forward, I want to get even more relaxed with it. Like I after we recorded this album, we did a single for Decibel called Demented Dissection, and in that song, we had this ambition of just tracking the entire thing live, which we more or less did. I mean, there's some like overdubs of like the solos and like the vocals aren't tracked live, but we really enjoyed doing that. It was fun. And for that song, I didn't have like a vocal booth. I just had a mic set up in the control room with Scoop, so I'm like standing next to him while he's recording, and I just had the song blasting over the PA, and I would just scream along to it like with the song kind of bleeding into my headphones. And that was a really cool and really exciting way to record vocals. I had never really done that before. And the reason that I wanted to try it was because Scoops was jokingly saying that that's how Bono from U2 records vocals. And he was, because I was telling him, like, dude, I hate being in like a cramped little like dark vocal booth and tracking these lines over and over. It's like so caustic and oppressive. And he was like, oh, well, you should just do it the way that Bono does it. I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, oh, he just records in the control room. He just has the music blasting and he just sings over it live. And I was like, well, I want to try that. So we tried it and it was awesome. I had a really amazing experience tracking vocals that way. So I think for the third album, whenever we end up recording it down the road, I want to try doing like a whole album like that.
And I love that the fact that you brought up Scoops, because people don't know Prosthetic Records, but for guys like us, we are fully aware of the grandeur and the importance of that label. And knowing the work that Scoops has done, could you walk us through not just the first time you met him, but how he helped influence the sound of the band to be recorded? Because it's very hard to get this really, really good raw sound, not on tape anymore, but translated into a recorded form. There's some bands that, you know, I always say Motley Crue, nothing against them. They're great live. Their recordings depends on the albums. It's not like the live show, or Kiss too. Great live, music's wonderful, and then you hear the recording and like, eh. And then you got bands like AC/DC, it's like recorded, live, it kicks ass. So what was his influence on the band being able to capture the sound, and what did you take from him? What are some of those lessons, especially from this session? Because the last session, you guys had to do it real quick. You had to get the album out for Legions. This time back in Philly, you guys had more time. So what do you think about what he gave you guys this time around and how he's been influential?
He's super influential. I mean, he has a really unique perspective as far as tracking bands goes that I think is very important to us, because for us, even going into tracking Lesions, like, we knew he was our guy right from the beginning because Kyle already knew him. Kyle played in the band called Full Body for a little bit, and they're kind of like a shoegazy, like more indie rock type stuff. And they had tracked with Scoops, and they had a really good experience with him. So when it came time to find somebody to record Legion, Scoops was like the first name on the list, just because Kyle knew him. He had a good experience with him. But we were excited about the prospect of working with him from the jump, because he's not a metal guy. You know, he's not a dude who comes to the recording theater with like years and years of experience of tracking death metal bands. You know, it's not like he has like all of his little plugins and he just presses a couple buttons and then lets you do your thing. Like he's familiar with metal. He has like an understanding of what makes the genres tick and all the various subgenres work, and he like knows the bands, but he's not like an obsessive metal listener or metal, you know, studio engineer. So that was exciting because we knew that he was going to be able to imbue the record with kind of like a quality that you wouldn't get from somebody who's just like a straight up metal producer. And on that same, you know, note, not to like diss any other bands, but like a lot of metal recordings are very sterile. They're very kind of like robotic and synthesized in the way they're engineered and mastered. And we didn't want that. We didn't want to feel like the band was just in the studio and we were running our instruments through like a billion different post-processing effects. Like we wanted it to sound like a band was playing live, and when you're listening to the album, it's like you're listening to what this band would sound like if you were to see them at a show. And that was our goal. And Scoops understood that completely, and because he came to recording us with that background of recording bands live or recording more like stripped down stuff. So that was very cool. And, you know, I wasn't there physically when they recorded with him for Lesions. I had work. So we had to track all my vocals at home. But they had a great time with him when they were tracking Lesions, even though it was a very rushed experience. And our biggest thing for going into tracking its time was just we want to do it with Scoops again, but we just want more time with him. We want to be able to really like experiment with some of the ideas that he had, and really kind of like get into some more, not exactly experimental, but some more kind of like out there things that he was trying to do with this new record. So like we tracked all of the guitars live. You know, we just had Kyle and Jared sitting across from each other, and they just tracked all their parts like together at the same time, which was huge. They tracked all their solos live, which was awesome. It wasn't just like them sitting in the control room punching 1,000 different takes of a solo. Like they were just ripping a solo and then doing like one full take. And if it sucked, then we scrapped it and then we tried it again. So that live element that he gave us was super, super, super important to like establishing the Undeath sound, so to speak.
How did you like the setting of Philadelphia? Because every interview you will ever see me in, if somebody's done anything in Philly, I'm bringing it up. That's my second home. It was terrible to me at first, and it ended up accepting me and blah, blah, blah. But Philly definitely has a vibe. Every city, every major market city has a vibe. Was there any stories or any feelings you got from recording in Philadelphia? I know you guys performed at the Pharmacy there. I think it was like 2019. But there's an inherent feeling in Philadelphia. So I just wanted to know if you had any crazy experiences. One night I got off and then there was a fist fight at Xfinity, or something about Philadelphia. There was a mood at this particular studio. Could you just, at the top of your mind, bring up something that you might think helped influence the sound or production, or just even a good time for this recording process?
Yeah, I don't know if it was like there were like Philly specific things that I'll get into, but like honestly, like the biggest thing about the recording process that I think just like influenced us was the fact that we were in such close quarters the entire time. And I think a place like Philly kind of necessitates that because space is kind of at a premium there.
Mm-hmm.
So we were, we lived in the studio, and the headroom where we tracked is not a big studio. It's like 3 rooms. And most of those rooms are not that big. Like the live room is pretty small compared to a lot of live rooms that you'll see in studios. So not to say it's not nice, like it's a beautiful studio, but it's small. And you've got all of us living there the entire time. So basically we would just track all day from pretty much like 10 a.m. to midnight, sometimes later. And then we would just drag out our sleeping bags and our air mattresses and just sleep on the floor, and then wake up and put them away and just get right back to work. So that intimacy in terms of just like being around each other nonstop for 2 weeks really influenced just the way that we approached writing the record. It created this kind of like camaraderie, I guess, that I think shows up on the record because it sounds very unified when you listen to it. It sounds like everybody is in pretty perfect like lockstep with one another, and that's not like studio trickery. That's because we were so close together. We're so familiar with each other that we couldn't help but just like play and sync with each other. So that was a very cool and very exciting experience. But Philly specific, I mean, look, where we come from, we don't get hams. So
Okay.
the beer hams. So, and I know that to somebody in Philly or Pennsylvania, that's like not exciting. It's like hams, like who cares? But to us, like that's cool. Like we don't get that in Rochester. So there were a lot of nights that we would finish recording, and then me and Jared or whoever in the band would take the walk down to the gas station, like the 24-hour gas station down the street, and get like a case of hams or something and bring it back to the studio, and we would just get drunk and just hang out and then wake up hungover and continue to record. So I mean, to me, that seems like a Philadelphia experience, just getting drunk on hams and then sleeping on a floor.
Definitely the sleeping on the floor part. We got some stories, but I will say this: we'll talk about the IPAs. We listen, Yards. I'm a boost y'all right now. Here's your plug. Yards is my favorite Philadelphia beer, and then there's that IPA spot, not too far outside the city. But we'll chat about that. Let's get to my favorite song. I'm gonna be selfish. Not your favorite song. My favorite song off the new album, Necrobionics, and a lot of that had to do because of the music video. Just gelled so great with Doom. And you got to do me a service. You got John Romero to plug Lesions. And for anybody that knows video games, anybody that's a coder, John Romero and his team are they're the top. It doesn't matter if you got these standards? Everybody knows his name in the programming community. So for me, can you walk me through your first hearing of the riff and going over the analysis of, okay, how can I create this song? What was it about this song that you guys were like, you know what, this flows perfectly with Doom 2. Let's actually throw it as a music video. Like, did you guys have to go to PR and be like, hey, so can we get copyrighted for a video game? Or did they say, oh, we have to make this from scratch? I want a little bit of both. I want from the start of the process right down to the music video for this particular song.
Yeah, man. So that was a fun one. I mean, I remember the first time I heard that riff and I was like, yo, like that is sick. And then Matt started doing the little like skip drum beat over it, and I was like, yo, that is sick. Like the song is awesome. So that was like, that one made a big impression on me first off, and I was like, this one has to be a single, like no matter what. Like people have to hear this before the album comes out. Like I don't care what else we do. So I was pretty attached to that song from pretty much the minute that we wrote it. But you know, lyrically, it deals with a lot of the same stuff that we're talking about on Enhancing the Dead, which is the next song on the album. And Enhancing the Dead was the first song off of our second demo, Sentient Autolysis. So we had this. So lyrically, like it's all about that kind of Doom-like subject matter, like right, like all the revenants from Doom, just like a strapping Gatling guns to demons and stuff like that, and mechanized zombies and things of that glorious nature. So we had this joke for a long time that we were going to call Necrobionics and Enhancing the Dead the Enhancing the Dead suite, and we were going to have Necrobionics have a parenthetical next to it, and it's going to be like Necrobionics parentheses the Necrobionics suite part 1, and then Enhancing the Dead was going to be the Necrobionics suite part 2. But even that was like a little too goofy for us, so we didn't actually roll with it. But yeah, I mean that song just has lots of like Doom-like imagery in it, so I think that idea was kind of always in our heads for what we might do for a video for it. And honestly, the idea of just setting it to Doom footage didn't come until later, until we had already tried something else, because we had kind of like grander ambitions of doing like a fully animated video. We were gonna have Justin, who did the lyric video for Lord of the Grave, where he kind of like animated the album cover for Lesions. We were gonna have him come back and do like a full-fledged like animated video. It was gonna be like a huge production, but we just ran out of time, and we couldn't get it done, and we needed to figure something out, because you know, by the time we realized that we weren't gonna, it wasn't in the schedule or the budget to get a fully animated video done. We're like less than 2 weeks from that song coming out, so we needed to have something. And that's when I'm pretty sure it was Kyle who was just like, well, why don't we just play Doom and set the song to it? And we were like, that's such a good idea. Like, why wasn't that the first thing that we thought of? Like, the song is almost literally about Doom. Like, why didn't we do this first? So yeah, one night, me and Kyle and Grotto, our merch guy, and Tommy, we just got on Doom 2, played a couple deathmatch rounds, and then we sent all the footage to Eric Easterday, who directed all the videos for this album. And I mean, I'm like truly floored by what he was able to put together in the amount of time that he had, because stylistically, I think he just nailed it. Like the opening like title sequence where it's like the Doom menu and it's like in the Doom font, like he got Undeath like pixelated and everything like that, like, and then like the end screen with a little bunny rabbit, like he just crushed it. And I think I kind of like embarrassed him a little bit, because when he sent us the video, I sent him all these like very heartfelt texts. I was like, dude, you should be so proud of yourself. Like, this is amazing. And he was like, oh, shucks, like, stop. So, but I mean, like, I love that video. I think he crushed it. Like, it's definitely my favorite video on the album. But yeah, that's how it all came together.
For the untrained ear and somebody that's just getting into Undeath, you guys have, again, a wide array of sound that is a powerhouse because you can hear the influences, but it's your own. And we've had discussions about how metal bands aren't being, you know, revolutionary now, how you know, this or that. And it same goes for death metal. You guys came out at a time where death metal was just plateaued, and now you are guys are the head of the resurgence. On this album, what would you say is the best song that represents Undeath as the entity that I just exclaimed? What song on this album? I would say personally for me, it's between the Defiled Again and the Funeral Within. That really solidifies like, hey, this is our sound and we're different. But for you, when you were listening to the album and saying, hey, this is great, this is good, what was that song you heard and said, that's Undeath, without a shadow of a doubt?
I would also say Defiled Again. I think that there's a lot of songs on that record that I think really encapsulate like what we're going for as a band and like the Undeath sound. Like I keep saying, like I think Rise from the Grave is a good example. Like the title track, you know, I think it has all those elements. It's got the big in your face chorus, but it's like still unmistakably death metal. You know, I think there's tons of songs like that in the record, but Defiled Again for me is like the one. And I think a lot of that just kind of comes from the fact that I'm pretty sure if it wasn't Rise from the Grave, Defiled Again was like the first song that we wrote for the record. And to me, that song, like from the moment I heard it, I was just like, yes, like this is finally like what we're going for realized. Like this is like the closest we've ever come to sounding like the way that I think that we sound in my head, you know. And I think Defiled Again is just an awesome song. I think the chorus is so infectious on that one. The riffs are so good. It moves at such a good pace. Like it doesn't waste any time. It's got a really nutty solo at the end. Like I just think everything about it is just like beat for beat perfect in terms of like what we're trying to do. And like I'm a very modest person. Like I get very uncomfortable like singing my own praises and like talking about how much I like my own band. But Defiled Again is a song that I'll like happily brag about. Like I think that song is just so sick. So yeah, I definitely would say that's like the not the pinnacle, but like the best song that like represents us at this stage.
So one thing that I loved, you guys made it a point to do better PR for this album. Again, Legions was a rush project, pretty much got signed. It's like, hey, we need an album now. And you're like, oh, damn, all right, bet. So having had the time to go out on tour to support the album, other than doing interviews, walk me through like, okay, you know, this is our sophomore effort. We have to do a better job of promoting this. You guys have a really, really good line of gear. You have great merch, not just the shirts, but you got your Crocs. I'm pretty sure you have an alcoholic drink too. It's a beer, right? The IPA.
Yeah, we've got a couple.
And I'm sitting here thinking like the bulk of the money to sustain the band is the live shows and the merchandise. And it seems like you guys already had a really, really good grasp on merch. So what would be different other than doing interviews to promote? How do you go to the company? How do you go to Prosthetic and go, hey, we want to do better at promoting this? What is that like? What's the start and how do you proceed to make a name for the album to the masses?
Damn, you have a lot of good questions. I think it almost wasn't like a conscious effort on our part. Like I think we did know that we wanted to like ramp up the PR for this album. We wanted to get out in front of it way more than we did for Lesions. But I think a lot of that just came from the fact that with Lesions, we didn't know what we were doing. Like none of us had ever like promoted an album before. And we had a lot less resources then, you know, and I think none of us really knew what Lesions was going to become. So when we released the album, there really wasn't like a big PR campaign for it. Like, and that's not to say people didn't work hard on it. Like, you know, Becky and everybody at Prosthetic, like, they got us some interviews, like they pushed the album, they got us some decibel and stuff like that. So that was big, and I, you know, endless props to them for that. But there really wasn't that concerted push the way there was this time. And I think the reason that we are doing it now is just because of how much Lesions surprised us. So when that album kind of took off for us and placed us on a much higher profile than we were expecting, we kind of realized like, well, you know, next time around we got to really ramp it up. We got to step it up. We got to be more serious about this. So that's really about as conscious as it got for us. But there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff too. Like I know everybody at Prosthetic, like they brought on Nikki, who's like doing publicity for us now, and she's awesome. Like she's really hooked it up for us, like this entire press cycle. Like she's just the best. Becky and Will at Prosthetic, like they've been getting us a ton of interviews and doing a ton of really good stuff behind the scenes for us. Like everybody's just been working super hard to make this thing happen. So honestly, like I think it just comes down to the fact that we just knew that we had to. We knew that we just had to do it differently this time, you know?
And I do want to shout out Nikki Law at Breaking the Law PR. Wonderful, wonderful to work with her. Golly, my man, I'm at a loss for words. Just how great, like you can literally feel the care in every email. Like even it's like a normal, like you'd see it every time. Like great, thanks. You feel that. You're like, damn, you know that shit. So it's great that you guys are doing what you're doing at this time. You said it yourself. Perfect timing, right place at the right time. Everything just fell into place, and I can't help but just think it was a lot of hard work that was just predestined. Sometimes people say it's destiny, you know, some people say no, it's, you know, when hard work meets an opportunity. But there's something to be said when the stars align. That doesn't happen for everybody. For this current tour, you guys are going out with Dying Fetus. You guys already have your chops now, having gone out with Black Dahlia, having gone to the shows. What are you hoping to do different as far as stage? And a second add-on is things that people really don't get to talk about is what the singer uses. You know, everybody hears about the guitarist gear, what cabinets they're using, what pedals, the basses, the drums. Hey, we're using Dixon drums, or etc. For you, are you picky with what mic you have? Are you picky with what ears you have? Or are you just kind of give me whatever the house has and I'll rock it? Because sound check, it's so pivotal. People don't know this, but it could be the biggest pain in the ass out of everything, because getting the right sound in a particular setting where the acoustics isn't good, or, you know, for some Lord forsaken reason, the sound just doesn't bounce off the stage, or, you know, it's stuff we would understand. But you get what I'm saying? So for you, what are you guys hoping to do different this tour cycle? Actually, when you perform, and what gear do you use or prefer to have when you sing?
Yeah, totally. I got my computer open right now. I got to look up this mic. So in the live setting, I'm really not picky about what mic I use. Let's see. Sorry, what is this thing? I'm not gonna be able to find it. Okay, so
it's okay.
You know, at the practice space, I'm pretty sure I just use like an SM58. Like that's just like your standard issue like vocal microphone. So that's what I use. So I'm comfortable with at the space. Live, you know, as long as the sound check is good and thorough, and as long as the sound guy like seems to know what he's doing, like that's all that really matters to me. I'm not like a diva when it comes to this stuff. I'm not gonna walk on stage and be like, it's not an SM58. Like, what are we doing here? What is this, amateur hour? Like, I don't care. Like, as long as everybody behind the scenes is doing what they're supposed to be doing, like I'm easy. But in the studio, I definitely am like way more picky. And there is a specific microphone that is very common, and I am completely blanking on what it's called, but it's like, it's black and it's large. It's got a big foam head, and you can hold it on like with a handle. It's like a little handheld mic, but it's like studio quality. And I used it one time when we were recording a Druce record, because I remember everything before that. I was tracking vocals the way that I think you traditionally track vocals, where, you know, you have the mic set up in front of you and you're standing there with your headphones and you're just static and screaming into it. But then somebody suggested I use this handheld mic to track vocals, and it just like was so much more comfortable for me. I loved it from the instant I tried it. And from then on, from that recording and through everything I've done since, like I need that specific microphone. And it's not hard to find. It's not like an outrageous request, but I wish I remember what it was called. But most studios have like 2 or 3 of them at least, so it's never been an issue. But live, I'm the complete opposite. Like I don't care really, as long as the mic works, you know.
So again, back to the merch, because you are a merch guy and you have so many great shirts and vinyls and 7-inches. What for you would be the definitive, like, if we could get this type of merch for the band, that would blow me away? Like, you know, I can't remember their bloody name. There was a company that was just fire, and I know it's in my notes, and I'm having a hell of a time trying to find it. I'm so sorry. But I know there was a merch company, like you would open up the box and then you would smell like the must, or you would smell like the blood, and then it'd have like all this cool stuff with it. I think you might remember, but what is a merch item that you've had in your mind for the band? It's like, if we could get this, kick it.
You know what I really want to do that we haven't done yet? I want to do a vinyl record that's like blood filled. I know a lot of bands have done that, but it's like clear record with like red fluid on the inside, so when you turn the record around, like it's like blood is flowing through it. That's been something I've wanted to do with Undeath since like we started the band, but like the opportunity just hasn't risen for us to do that yet because they are very expensive to make. But I would love to do that someday.
Do you know the process for that? Because now I'm thinking, like, how much blood would be needed? Would it be the band's blood? Would it be just blood in general?
Oh, I don't think it's actual blood. I think it's just like red goop. I think getting actual blood into a vinyl record would be a much more laborious process. But yeah, it's just like a lot of bands do it. It's like it's just kind of like a red goop that I think you mix into like the vinyl mixture or whatever, and it's like, so that when you press it, it creates this kind of like free flowing red liquid in the center of the record. I have no idea how the technical process for it is. I'm just completely speculating here, but I would love to do that at some point.
You guys grew up in an area with a lot of colleges. I went to a school near a lot of colleges too. I went to a school near Villanova called Eastern. You guys were in Rochester, and there's like 4 colleges around, a lot of bands. But the thing I love about this band is you guys love your IPAs. We're going back to it. There's a place called Tired Hands near Philadelphia. It's called Ardmore, PA. Tired Hands, and they.
I'm familiar. Yep.
Oh, my brother. All right. We're golden. Have you had? What was your favorite beer there?
Oh, I don't remember, dude. All their names are so long. I when we were recording the album though, there was like a beer distributor down the street from the studio, and we got a bunch of Tired Hands cans a lot. So I'm very familiar with that brewery.
They blessed it, man. So I'm telling you, they put on a show. They do a birthday show every year. They had, I think it was conversion of can't say their name.
Corrosion of Conformity.
Thank you. I can never say that name, but they had them come play. They had a bunch of all these, like, I think Baroness came one time, but I really can't say. Maybe it was for Decibel Metal, but you guys should definitely hop on that, because I tell you, that was one of the best shows I ever went to. I was such a regular there that at the show I got plastered. I started going to like wherever I wanted. I'm in like the VIP section. I'm like, yeah. And then I start seeing people. I'm like, they're letting me get through. And then I see like all the bartenders. I was like, oh shit, they know me. Okay, we're good. Walk me through your top beers. Like Tired Hands, Alien Church would be my favorite as far as IPAs. I just showed you Yards. What are your top 3 favorite beers? And then how does your beer, how does that compare to those beers that are still your favorite?
Whew, that's a tough one. I don't know if I have like a top 3 all-time favorite beers. I mean, I do have like a list of breweries, like just a short list in my head of just like places that I love going, like Other Half out in the Finger Lakes here in Rochester. Amazing brewery, amazing space. They just brew like world-class New England IPAs like it's nothing. Like they just churn out perfect beers constantly. So that place is very near and dear to my heart. Nine Maidens here in Rochester who we do a lot of like Undeath collaborative beers with. I think they're an awesome brewery. They're like a even smaller than a microbrewery. They're like a nano brewery. Like they're a very, very small operation, but they do a lot of really cool stuff. They play around with a lot more like traditional styles. So they do a lot more like Belgian inspired stuff. Not quite as many more like hazy IPAs or whatever is trendy right now. Not a lot of like fruited sours really. But yeah, that brewery is awesome. Honestly, if I had to pick like my favorite beer, like not just like cheap domestic stuff, like my favorite craft beer, I think I'm going like the wit from Omegang, because that was one of the first craft beers I ever really had before I even knew what craft beer was. And Omegang is in Cooperstown, which is like 3-ish hours from me. So I was kind of really impressed by the fact that somebody was making like such amazing beer so close to me. And then that's when I learned like there were actually, dozens and dozens of world-class breweries right here in Rochester too. And that was huge. So yeah, Omegang Wit would be, I think, my number one. And it's crazy to see like how much that brewery has grown in terms of like prominence over the years, because when I first started getting familiar with them, they weren't nearly as big as they are now. But yeah, I love that spot.
Were you automatically hooked on IPAs, or did it take time? The first time I had an IPA, I was like, this ain't for me. And then after a really crazy night of Jack Daniels and drinking, I was like, you know what, I think this is for me now. And then I developed my love for the taste.
Yeah, it didn't click until the whole like hazy craze started popping off, because I remember like for a while the only IPAs you could ever really get were like the West Coast styles. They're way more bitter, I guess, like just way more like fruity, not quite as sweet or hazy as what we've got now. And I remember like the first couple IPAs that I had were like the Stone IPA. I had like a Sierra Nevada Torpedo, which is like a double, I think. And both of those are very piney, like West Coast, like capital W West Coast IPAs. And I was like, this is not for me. Like, I don't like this at all. And I was very comfortable sticking with my light beers and pilsners and stuff at that point. So I wrote off IPAs for a long time. And then years later, I was working at I guess you can call it like a health food store. It's like an organic grocery store here in Rochester called Lori's Natural Foods. And I worked there for about 2 years. And there's a guy there who's still a very good friend of mine. His name is also Kyle. There's a lot of Kyles in my life. And he was super into craft beer. And he turned me on to a lot of stuff that I just was completely unfamiliar with. Like, he was the guy that introduced me to the concept of a hazy IPA. And I remember he was really excited one day at work because this bar here in town was getting cans of the Alchemist Heady Topper, which is like a very rare. I don't know. I think they make a lot more of it now than they used to, but it's like kind of like a pioneering hazy IPA. And he was like, bro, like they're getting cans. Like, this is so unheard of. Like, this beer is so hard to find. Like, do you want to come with me to this bar after work? I was like, yeah, bro, sure, whatever. I'll go try this like special beer with you. And we went to this bar and I got a can of it. And I was like, this is an IPA? Like, this is not an IPA. Like, this tastes good. And he was like, yeah, dude. He's like, this is a New England IPA. It's like a whole separate style. And I was like, oh shit, like this is actually awesome. And then from then on, I was just hooked. And I like was all aboard like the hazy train for like 2-3 years after that. I was like obsessed. Got really into like the beer trading wormhole for a while. Really into like waiting outside of breweries for like hours and hours to get like the limited can drops and stuff like that. Like, that was something I was very into for a while, and much less into it these days. But I kind of bounce off it hard just because I was so into it so intensely. But after I got into hazies and like the New England style, I kind of circled back and like revisited West Coast IPAs, the more traditional IPAs, and I was like, oh, actually, these can be very good too. So it took me a long time to get there.
Family, I'm happy you joined because I understand what you're going through. It's pretty great. So I want to dive back real quick because I had a thought spark up that while we were talking about the IPAs, the pandemic was going and you guys released the music. You were doing good. You were even recording new music during it. But everybody forgets that you guys have normal jobs, that you guys are, day to day, because this style of music, especially, a musician's life is not lavish. The moments where it's great is when you're performing. Everything else, the touring, the trying to make ends meet to survive. How did you specifically survive the pandemic as far as work? What was happening for you? Was it to the point where you were getting just enough money from Prosthetic that you didn't have to worry about anything else? Or were you like me, like working two jobs, or some other people who had to go out and get unemployment? What was your position during this time where the band took advantage, but then again, everybody's really struggling?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways I kind of got lucky, like when the pandemic stuff started happening, because I think about somebody like my girlfriend who, at the time, she was working at a grocery store, so she was really like on the front lines of all that shit. You know, she was like dealing with the first huge wave of like COVID madness, like right when it was first happening, and she was just like staring it face to face every day. So I never had that experience. So I feel very fortunate in that sense. But for me, when everything started, I was working at a law firm here in town doing kind of like, I guess you could call it like glorified secretarial work. Like I was what you might call like a legal assistant, but really what I was doing all day is answering the phone, making sure all the lawyers in the firm got like the right documents they needed for cases. I was like making copies. Like it was all very secretarial stuff.
You're not a paralegal?
I'm not a paralegal, no. But it's funny you bring that up because that was kind of going to be like my next track if Undeath didn't happen. I was like, because I liked that job, it was fun, you know. But I didn't want to just answer the phone forever. I wanted to be a little bit more serious about it. So I was looking into that. But I was working at this job. I was doing it for probably like a year and a half, 2 years. It was the job that I had immediately after I quit Lori's. And I was really enjoying it. But then, you know, there was like rumblings about this new virus and like, oh, there's like the first cases in California. And now there's like the first cases in New York. And nobody was really taking it that seriously. But then like things started to get like very serious very fast. And I remember like a week before they sent us all home, I had my like yearly review with my boss, who was a very intimidating guy. He was like a very serious lawyer, you know. And I had my review and it went great. And like, you know, they were just heaping all this praise on me and it was awesome. But then at the end, the the guy was like, my boss was like, well, do you have any questions for me? And I was like, you know, I don't, but like, I'm just like, I want to pick your brain about something because I know you're a smart guy. Like, what do you think about this whole coronavirus situation that's happening right now? Like, what do you think is going to happen? And he kind of gave me this very long, like patronizing answer where he was like, oh, this thing is not that serious. People are overreacting. The flu kills X number of people every year, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, like word. And I took him at his word, you know, because he's a smart guy. And I was like, clearly he knows what he's talking about. And then like 4 days later, my, I guess you could call like team leader, like the guy who was kind of in charge of my whole section of the office, gathered us all in like a secret meeting. And he was like, yeah, they're going to send everybody home tomorrow. He's like, I just got the word from the bosses. Like, we're going to start working from home. So we all went home the next day and it was awesome. You know, I was just got to wake up every day, roll out of bed, make myself a cup of coffee, and just sit in front of my laptop, just chill, and edit documents, and occasionally answer phone calls for 8 hours a day, and then close my laptop and continue to hang out in my pajamas. But like in that sense, it was pretty dope. And I know it sounds callous to say because like millions of people were dying, but for me personally, like it was a pretty relaxing time, honestly. Like I gotta be honest about that. And then it became pretty obvious that they weren't going to be able to like retain their whole roster of staff, laid some people off. I got furloughed, but I was receiving unemployment insurance or, assistance from the government. So that was pretty great. So all of a sudden, I'm making more money from my government handouts that I was making at my actual job, which was pretty crazy. And that was dope. I mean, I got furloughed and then laid off, so I was still collecting unemployment insurance assistance. But for the real scary part of the pandemic, where it really didn't seem like things were gonna ever move in a positive direction, I was just kind of coasting. I was just collecting government paychecks and just hanging out and just chilling at home with my girlfriend and just relaxing. So it was cool. But honestly too, with as far as Undeath goes, we had already just signed to Prosthetic right before lockdown went in. So, and I knew that our touring schedule was about to get way more demanding. So I was beginning to formulate in my mind how I was going to quit this job and the way I was going to approach it, and how close I was going to have to get before our first big tour that I would until I had to quit, so I could have some money. So my decision was kind of made for me in that sense, where all of a sudden I didn't have a job and I was like, okay, well, I just got to go all in on Death now.
But that is fortunate. And you get both stories. You get some people that were ravished by the pandemic. You get some people that made out. I will attest, I have never been busier in my life during the pandemic. I was doing 6 a.m. to sometimes it was 11 p.m. But it was fortunate for me, like you said, the money wise, and I was able to do a lot of things I wouldn't have been able to because people were free as far as interviews and etc. But and I'll never forget it, man. I was working near a hospital, and two things. I had a buddy of mine. He showed up in his Jeep. He's one of those guys, he's ready for the end of the world. He loves going out, camping by himself, climbing mountains.
Yeah, he's a prepper.
Oh, he 100%. He's got some gear, how the knife in the buckle, the turnbuckle of your
Yeah.
He's awesome. I love him. But he showed up one day, got a full tank of gas. He was like, yo, bro, it's here. Just be ready. And I was like, okay, no problem. And then when it really dawned on me, because, everybody was thinking swine flu, just regular flu, etc. I had a ER doctor come through, get gas. And I saw him every now and again, always cheery. But today he had that look on his face.
Yeah.
And he was like, man, I don't know, this thing, this is something serious. I was like, well, how many cases you got? We went over some details, and he's like, nah, man, I think this is serious. I was like, we'll give it some time. It'll blow over. And he's like, I don't think this time. And he got in and left. And the last time I saw him, my man was beat. It was nothing but craziness. And I think people got crazy during the pandemic. They got a little ruder, a little meaner.
Totally.
So for you, with death metal and everything, there are certain times where people become conflicted with their beliefs, performing or supporting certain things. If you grew up Christian or sheltered, you don't listen to Slayer. That's satanic. Don't do it. Don't watch Harry Potter. Stay away from it. It's satanic. And there's a line where people don't see, where it's the Swedish death metal bands, they're praising Satan and they really might mean it, versus this is a story. It's purely entertainment. Sympathy for the devil. It's just the song. It's nothing more. It's nothing less. They don't see the difference between praising, what is being talked about, and just presenting a story. For you, you ever had that inner turmoil or confliction when dealing with a song that was presented to you, or a lyric, or supporting a band? For me, I do not listen to Mayhem. That is the one band where I feel there is a spiritual unease just with everything that they did, just how the singer passed away. I get it. They're just guys. They're living life. Life is crazy. But sometimes you can feel a presence, a spiritual presence, or a feeling of, this isn't something I really should play with. Have you ever dealt with that in your dealings as a singer?
I think for me, it's always been less about the religious and the spiritual aspect of it, and more just about the social aspect of it that can get testy for me. Like, I'm not really a religious person by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I do have some beliefs, I guess, that are I think I would comfortably describe as just like spiritually leaning. Like, I do believe in certain like higher forces and energies out there that dictate our lives. Like, that is something that I believe pretty intensely. But I've never really had like a strict traditional religious background or anything like that. So as far as that aspect of it goes, it's never really made me uncomfortable. But because that's just how I was raised. But the stuff that gets under my skin and the stuff that makes me uncomfortable, as far as like stuff that I wouldn't want to perform, is lyrics about like murdering women, lyrics about like, you know, that are very like homophobic, lyrics that are just very like transgressive in a way that are just doing it for pure shock value. Like, that stuff just has never been interesting to me. It's never been funny for me. And I just, as far as like my own performance, the way that I approach my own band, it's just not something I'd ever really be interested in discussing or talking about lyrically. I just think it's lazy. You know, I think a lot of death metal, and you know, I'm guilty of listening to a lot of bands that their primary lyrical concern is the homicidal murdering of women. Like, it is what it is. Like, you know, I love a band like Devourment, but half their songs are about killing women. Like, it's horrible. But like, and that's just something that I have to cope with and reckon with personally on a daily basis, which is a lot of the bands that I listen to. But as far as my own performance, I would never put that in a song. I would never feel comfortable singing lyrics like that, because I just think you're not trying hard enough. I think you're just going for the lowest hanging fruit. I think you're going for the easiest thing that you can possibly do to be transgressive, which is to sing about killing, you know, 52% of the human race. Like, it's just it's not exciting to me. It's not cool to me. So yeah, that's where things definitely get testy for me.
You're really knocking me off my understanding of the genre, because low key, when I think about it, the bands I listen to, now that you mention it, I never really heard or thought of like a specific target of women or children or homosexuals. Like, when I listen to the bands I listen to, it's like everybody gets it. It is, but when you hear it, it's more of like a personal torture to you or particular individual. But I never thought of like a broad, like there was metal out there. It's like, we're killing women, kill women. I never really, that just daunted on me that it was even possible, and I should be ashamed of my ignorance for thinking that.
No, man, no, you definitely shouldn't be ashamed. But I mean, it's really like, it's more like a specific style of death metal, and death metal is already like a very specific subgenre of metal. You know, it's like, you think of the bigger bands like Cannibal Corpse or Carcass or like bands like that, their lyrics primarily are about like, you know, human dissection and killing people and torture and murder, but like, it's vague. They sing about it, and you read the lyrics in a way where it could be anybody. It doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter like, doesn't matter race, doesn't matter creed, doesn't matter like sexual preference. Like, it's just a person being killed, and that's the thing that's like macabre and gory and exciting about it. To me, like, I don't see an issue with that. Where it starts to get uncomfortable for me is when you go into this more niche subgenre of death metal, like brutal death metal, is where you really start to get the like very viscerally anti-female, anti-gay people lyrics. And it's just like, it sucks, because there's so many bands in that world of like brutal death metal, like all the United Guttural bands, all the like Unique Leader bands, like so many of them are so sick. Like, the riffs are so good, like the patterns are so exciting, like they're so fun to listen to. But I just know I can never read the lyrics, because it helps that you can't understand them while you're listening to the song, you know. But like, I just know that I can't ever read them, because they're just gonna bum me out too much. Because I'm like, bro, you have such an awesome band. Like, you guys are just killer musicians, and the thing that you're choosing to like wave your flag about is murdering women. like you couldn't think of anything else? Like, why did you have to let your own little like incel beliefs like infiltrate what is otherwise like a sick band? Like, it's just a bummer, you know?
Yeah. Family, I got two more for you. For you, you were able to be in places where people would kill to be. Quite not literally, but you get the idea. Sorry, all these puns. What was a question to someone that you were able to tour with that you really wanted to get off your chest, and it could have been serious, it could have been something minor. It's like, hey, when you were performing this day, you know, what was going through your mind, or when you did this song, or something serious like, hey, you know, have you ever dealt with a situation with a fan doing this, and how did you deal with it? Who was somebody you toured with you were actually able to ask a fan question? And
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have an answer for that like immediately. I when we toured with the Black Dahlia Murder, you know, they have a DVD. It's kind of like a mini documentary about the band. It's like a tour documentary, I guess, called Majesty. And I used to watch it a lot when I was like first getting into metal, just because it's hilarious. And it's not like the typical band documentary where it's just like, okay, here's the history of the band, and now here's like some live footage, and then we'll wrap it up. It's like they're joking the entire time. They're like partying. It's a lot of just like very goofy behind the scenes footage. And like I've probably watched that DVD like 15, 20 times. Like I'm obsessed. I was obsessed with it for a long time. And one of the first nights of the Black Dahlia Murder tour, I mean, I don't know how it is for other bands, but like Undeath, like we're all pretty shy. So like we when we roll up for tours, it kind of takes us like a couple days. Not that we're like off-putting or mean or anything, but like it kind of takes us a couple days to get like really comfortable and start actually like getting out of our shells and wanting to like go hang out with people and stuff. So basically the first like 3 or 4 days of that Black Dahlia Murder tour, I was just like working up the courage to talk to them. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be on the road with these guys for 6 weeks. Like I gotta make this happen eventually. So like the 4th or 5th show, we were in, I think like Milwaukee, and we all got really drunk, and I got kind of like those like beer balls, like drunk confidence, and I was like, I'm gonna go talk to Brian, like Brian from Black Dahlia Murder. Like I'm gonna go ask him questions about the Majesty DVD. Like now's the time. And I like went outside and I found him just like standing by their bus smoking a cigarette, and I was like, the time could not be more opportune. So I just like staggered up to him, and he like I was just like punishing him with questions about like the DVD. I was like, so when you guys were in Europe, like was it sick? Like did you have a good time? Like was it fun? And he could not have been more like nice and accommodating towards my like litany of terrible questions. I was just punishing the shit out of him. But he was awesome. And then like pretty much from that night on, like we chilled a lot more, and we actually like talked and hung out like as peers, and that was very cool. So that was definitely a time that I got to live out some fanboy fantasies.
I'm happy that worked out for you, man, because the last time I heard you got, you know, the beer confidence was that mosh pit you tried joining. Suddenly you're like, oh, I got slid. This is what killed me. You said you got slid. I don't know if it was to the front or back, but you got hit and you just kept going. I'm like, bro, what
Yeah, so
force?
basically, like I'm not like I don't mosh. Like it's never been something that I've really felt compelled to do. Like I'll jump in a pit every now and again, but like I'm such an old guy when it comes to moshing. Like I like to just like do a couple little playful shoves and then just like go stand by the wall. Like I'm not that serious about it. I'm not like a pit boss, but yeah, like we were touring with Saint Bog. We did like a little 4 or 5 day like long weekend run with them. We were playing in Jersey, and they were playing the song, and I was like, God, like that riff is so good. Like that song is so hard. Like I got a pit. Like I'm gonna do it. I haven't moshed in like 3 years. Like I'm gonna do it right now. And I jumped in the pit. It was really rowdy. Instantly got shoved all the way to the front, and I'm like just up front, like fucking pumping my fist. And then I forget what happened exactly, but there was like a surge at the front of the stage, like somebody staged over something, and like a bunch of people moved back, and in the process like pushed me back, and I was so drunk that like I completely lost my balance immediately, stumbled all the way back to like the edge of the pit where I started, and just fell like flat on my back. And I tried to like prop myself up as I was falling because I was drunk, and I like bent my wrist in such a weird way in the process that it just instantly I knew like I fucked something up. And I just got out of the pit as fast as possible, and I'm like standing by our merch table and I'm watching my wrist, and I can just see it like swelling in front of my eyes. Yeah. And like every minute that goes by, it gets like harder and harder to move my hands at all. And then golly, it hurts so much. And the next morning, I had to wake up early and get Matt to drive me to a CVS so that we could get like a icy hot packs. Just so I had like any kind of relief. And it honestly took like months for it to stop swelling and for it to go back to normal. Like I don't know what I did specifically, but it sucked. That really sucked.
Man, that is crazy. I gotta say this, the best pit I was ever in, because I've been in a few, most harshest was Megadeth. That completely confused me. I didn't think they were that kind of band. But we had Death Angel and Overkill at the TLA where you guys are going to be performing. And when I say that was the perfect, I'm a jackass when it comes to the pits. So I'll be doing like a little dance like this, you know, I'll be going around. I really go in and hit people. I'm just there for a good time. But Deny the Cross, as bad of a Christian I am, as much as I love Jesus, Deny the Cross by Overkill is my jam. So I had this beer confidence. I took my beer and I just stood in the middle of the pit before it started, and people were swirling around me. And I got to like 75% of the song before somebody bopped the beer out my hand. I was like, "You son of a bitch, we were so close."
Yeah, you're very lucky you made it that far.
Oh, there were people protecting me, making sure they didn't hit the beer out. Like it was great. So here's the most important question of the whole entire thing. This is the one I always end on because it is the most pivotal. What's the best piece of advice someone has given you that readily comes to mind? It doesn't have to be music. It doesn't have to be serious. Hell, I have one where a guy was like, rent a tour bus, don't buy one. And then I've had other people like Doyle from the Misfits saying, is the fucking you're getting worth the fucking you're giving? Sometimes the best one I think I ever got was Ted Aguilar, Death Angel. He said, just live. There's so much happening. So when you just think, best piece of mind, who pops in your head? You hear them, they said it, and for some reason it stuck with you.
You know, honestly, it wasn't anything that anybody said to me specifically, but something that always sticks in my mind is there's a Thursday song, the band Thursday. They have a song called, I believe it's Stay True. I'm going to confirm that right now. If it's Stay True or Be True, I'm pretty sure it's Stay True. Yeah, it's Stay True. And the song is very powerful to me, at least, because it's Jeff Rickley, who's the singer of that band, and he's writing these lyrics to Touche Amore, who were kind of like a band that was following in Thursday's footsteps, and they were kind of like on the come up, and they were getting all this media attention for doing a lot of the same stuff that Thursday was doing back in the day. And Jeff Rickley is writing the song to him, and he's basically saying like, look, man, like you guys are on the way up right now. Like you got a lot of really cool things coming your way. And like, above all else, just like stay true. Like just remember what got you here. Remember the things that shaped you as an individual. Like don't forget these values and these ethics and these passions that led you to the point that you're at right now, because that's the only thing that's real. Like any money that you might receive from being in a successful band, any like, you know, industry people like just kissing your ass because they want to like make money off you, like any of that stuff, like it's fun and it's exciting while it's happening, but above all else, man, just stay true. And I remember like reading that song or listening to that song and like reading the story behind the lyrics when I was like 16, 17 years old, and it just made a huge impact on me. And I thought it was so cool that he would mentor somebody in a band like that he would give him such like salient and positive advice. But it's funny because like I never really thought that I would be in a position to like heed that advice, because any band that I was ever in never made it anywhere close to where Undeath is right now, you know. And that's not to say that Undeath is like achieved the pinnacle of success or anything like that, but like we've been very lucky. We've had some very cool opportunities, and our star has definitely risen over the years. But So now I kind of look at my life and I look at where I'm at right now, and the thing that I just keep needing to remind myself is just like, bro, you gotta stay true. Like when things seem hectic, when your kind of vision's getting clouded by like delusions of grandeur and shit like that, just like bring yourself back down. Like remember why you're here, remember why you started. So yeah, just stay true would be my piece of advice.
That was beautifully put. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex of the band Undeath Death Metal is resurging with their new album. It's Time to Rise from the Grave, out April 22nd, and they're going to be starting their tour in Rochester, New York, where they're from. And most importantly, on the very end, after they've honed their chops, they perfected the sound, and they've gone all around, coming back to Philadelphia. Guys,
oh, yeah.
It has been such an honor, a pleasure. And when I say you can tell, you're going to watch this video and you're going to see both of us leaning back. That's the comfortability we had talking to each other. But again, man, I can't express how much of a joy, how great it was to talk to you, Alex. I wish you guys fortune and a hell of a good time on this tour. Thank you for bestowing this album on us, man. Thank you for your time.
Bro, thank you very much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. So this was a lot of fun, bro. Yeah, for real. This is one of the I've done a lot of interviews for this album. This is definitely one of my favorites. So I thank you for that.
Everyone else, you know the usual saying, and I'm gonna say it again: be smart, be mindful, and rock on, guys. As always, John the Ninja out. Oh, I forgot to say God bless. Kind of ironic for this one. Either way, Ninja out.
Baby, you listen to John the Ninja. All your ears are about to go on a vacation. John the Ninja's got what you need.